Hello and welcome to another edition of the Sofa Sports News Show, brought to you by the FNX Network and Delta Plumbing Services. I'm joined this evening by two very special guests, both making their Sofa Sports News debuts. Football writer for Dream Team BBC, the Daily Mirror, and the sportsman Dale O'Donnell is on the line. Dale, how you doing, mate?
Not too bad. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. And we're also joined by the founder of Full Time Reaction and Twitter Whiz, Mr. Memz. How you doing, mate?
Hey, mate, that's quite an intro. It's a pleasure to be here, Harry, and it's good to be joined by Dale as well. So thanks for having us on, mate.
No problem. It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. So as usual, guys, the Premier League dominates our show, and we're going to kick off this week's show with our Your View question. So I'm going to put it to you guys first, and then a bit later on in the show, we'll head over to the polls on Twitter and on Facebook and see what our listeners think on the matter. Should Arsenal cash in on want-away forward Alexis Sanchez? We heard earlier in the day that Manchester City have made an offer of cash and Raheem Sterling or something along those lines. Is there any point in holding on to a player that ultimately doesn't want to sign a new contract? Dale, let's start with yourself.
I think it depends on that given player, and every circumstance is very, very different. For instance, look at Cristiano Ronaldo's last season for Manchester United. He wants away, he wants to go to Madrid, and everyone knew that. And Ferguson asked for one last season, and Ronaldo gave his all. I think if you look at certain other players, Fabregas, now I know you might have a bigger say on this for Arsenal, but did he give his all? Was that one of his better seasons? And I think that comes under some question marks. Sanchez, for me, is a hungry player, and I don't think he's a player that would ever not perform or not put everything into it. But it leaves a bad smell in the dressing room when everyone knows one of the main leaders wants to leave the club. It's not a good thing. For me, I think it's always best to get rid. But you haven't got many days to replace your best player. And some of that comes down to what were Arsenal doing all this summer. Well, why weren't they forcing Sanchez's hand? Do you want to go? Do you want to stay? Why leave it to now? Because realistically, you're not going to find a replacement. And I know Arsenal were trying to get Lamar. Looks like Liverpool could be squeezing in there. For me, I think you need to get rid, but you can't get anyone in. So it's even more complicated right now for Arsenal, to be honest.
Memz, what about yourself? You're a big Arsenal fan like myself, and how do you feel about the whole Sanchez situation? Should we just cash in on him?
Do you know what, Harry? It's a good question. I agree with Dale there, because if you've got a player who's unhappy and is not going to give 100%, you don't really want him there, because it's not good for the dressing room, like Dale says. But first off, how did Arsenal get in this situation where we've got Alexis Sanchez, Mesut Ozil, and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain and Jack Wilshere all coming towards the end of their contracts? It's a ridiculous situation that the four main star assets of the club has been left to run down. So it's a massive mistake in terms of financial gain for the club to even allow this to happen. Should Arsenal sell Alexis Sanchez? I believe they should. But ideally, I would sell him abroad. If PSG came in and offered a bit of money, and Julian Draxler would allow him to go abroad. But it's the idea of him going to Manchester City and to strengthen a rival club, as well as Oxlade-Chamberlain going to Chelsea, I think it could be one of the worst transfer windows in history for Arsenal.
Yeah, I mean, it is worrying, and being Arsenal fans like we are, we can see this firsthand, and we feel the frustration. I mean, we're seeing reports tonight that actually Manchester City are happy for Sterling to move the other way, but they want money on top. That sounds crazy to me. Dale, what do you make of that?
Sanchez is the better player by far, but look, I think again, does Sterling want to go to Arsenal? Does he want to leave City for Arsenal? Again, that's a strange one. Arsenal, take no offence right now, our club are in a bit of bother at the moment, and I think selling Sanchez is going to anger fans. Bringing Sterling, who's not half as good as Sanchez, isn't exactly going to cushion. Well, it might cushion the blow a small bit, but it's not exactly going to excite fans. You're still missing your best player. You're still losing to a domestic rival. And by right, Arsenal are a big football club and should be challenging for league titles. They're not. And by selling your best players, that's going to continue to be the case. You're not going to challenge for titles. And we've seen this before with Arsenal. We've seen it far too regularly with Robin van Persie. I'm not saying Nasri is one of your best players, but these are still key players that went to domestic rivals. And when are Arsenal going to put the foot down and say, right, we're going to start challenging? Because right now I'm thinking Sanchez is going to go. And who's the next best player when it comes to Arsenal? Leave shortly after because they're not being successful. The start of the summer, we were questioning whether Sanchez would be there at the end of the summer, whether Ozil would be there. And like I said it from day one. Why is Ozil even the same sentence? I know he came as a fantastic player, but just hasn't delivered. He hasn't performed. He's not consistent enough. It's a bit of an insult to Sanchez, if you ask me. But yeah, look, I think there's so many issues there. This is just a reoccurring team. I'm asking when are Arsenal going to do it again?
Memz, what's your feelings towards Mesut Ozil? Because he gets mixed reviews from Arsenal fans, and he divides opinion quite a lot. And I know that sometimes I watch Mesut Ozil and I think this guy's fantastic. And there's other weeks where, and I said it in my article today, he does his impression of Casper the Friendly Ghost. Like, I mean, what are your thoughts on it? Would you be as bothered if he left?
It's a great question, honestly, Harry. And Mesut's got one of these styles where he's almost like Berbatov in terms of his I don't know, his mannerisms towards playing. He does look sometimes lazy and he does look sometimes disinterested, but he can do moments of magic which can win you the game. And we've been crying out for players like Mesut Ozil, like Alexis Sanchez over the years. And going back to Dale's point, what he mentioned, like we did sell in the past Nasri, Adebayor, Van Persie, but that was really to pay off the stadium. Wenger said a couple of weeks ago that we've reached that point where we don't need to sell off players anymore. So I think that things have changed at Arsenal. It's just unfortunate that we have to sell these players now because of the contract situation which they're now in. But going back to your point, Harry, about Ozil, I think he's a fantastic football player, and I don't think that we've seen probably the best of Mesut Ozil over Arsenal for a couple of reasons. One, that he hasn't had that striker with blistering pace that he needs in order to flourish. Mesut wants to get the ball, look up and ping a pass forward. He hasn't had that over the years. He's had Giroud, who's not blessed with the most pace. Now we've got Lacazette. I was hopeful that we was going to see the best of Mesut. Another reason is I don't think Mesut's been potentially played in his best position over the years over at Arsenal as well. We've seen him sometimes playing off the flanks, asking him to track back. You know, I think to see the best out of Mesut Ozil, you need to play him in that 10 position next to a striker, almost in the Dennis Bergkamp role. And he hasn't really had that over the years over at Arsenal. We have seen it in the change of formation recently, but over the years he has been asked to play on the flanks and everything like that. I do believe Mesut gets some harsh criticism. You know, we did pay a lot of money for him, but if you look at that to Paul Pogba last season, you know, he came with almost doubled what Mesut Ozil was signed for. He didn't have the best of seasons as well. So I think it's because of Arsenal, because of Mesut Ozil, he does get some criticism and it's unjust. Fair
point. Fair enough. I mean, sticking with the theme of Arsenal, we've spoken about the players that won out, but they were absolutely decimated by Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool at Anfield on Sunday. And the Gunners suffered a 4-0 defeat, turning up the heat on Arsene Wenger just 3 weeks into the season. We're only 3 weeks into the season. Dale, we might be a little bit biased because we are Arsenal supporters, but from yourself, someone who looks at the club from the outside, what is the problem at Arsenal?
It's a collective problem. And that's why it's not simple. It's not just Arsene Wenger. It's not just the players. It's not just the board. It's all of them together. You look at the board, because 5 years ago they should have really started considering possibly moving on Wenger. That's when things, for me, began to look really, really bad. People can list off FA Cups, 2 FA Cups or whatever. Arsenal are not challenging for league titles, and that is the issue. That is the issue here. They're a big, big club. Like when I was growing up, it was Arsenal, Man United challenging every year. Keane, Vieira, big players, big personalities, excitement, and that's just not there anymore. Arsenal, they're not challenging. They're selling their best players to the other clubs. They're not bringing in these big players either every summer to strengthen their team. You look every summer, and you ask yourself, what should a team do? Should they be buying all these players? People said Spurs, you're not buying players. Your job at the start of the summer is to strengthen. At the end of the summer, your team should be even as good or if not better. And I ask myself every summer, that's not Arsenal. They're not strengthening, and they're weakening. They're weakening this summer again. It's too easy. I look, I know I keep saying it, but there's so many issues. Liverpool at the weekend, have they really strengthened as of on Sunday? Had they really strengthened this summer? I don't think so. and they absolutely blew you away. I don't think Liverpool were brilliant. I think Arsenal were pathetic. And Gary Neville's commentary was spot on, was really, really good. He looked at several players there that, like so Ramsey, I see them get a rating actually. I was reading the player ratings after the game, and in England, for some reason, they're way too generous. In France, you get ratings like a player out of 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10 or whatever. Ramsey got 6, 3 at most. Rob Holden, feel sorry for him a small bit, but 1, 2, championship rated defender. And the reason that's Arsenal's fault. They haven't got the players there. Mustafi's on the bench on the way out. So it's not just Wenger's fault either. Players need to look at themselves. But why are they misperforming? Why do they look not interested? Because of the manager. And the manager's not helped by the board either. Because he should be packing his bags. He should be gone. So look, it's a collective issue. I don't think you can and look, as well as this, you're Arsenal fans, we're talking about the best manager we've ever had. And we can't forget that either.
Yeah, that's key. I think that's key when people go to abuse him. I think it's important to remember that, like I want him gone. I've wanted him gone for quite some time. I've also been very careful about how I voice my opinions towards him, because like you said, he's the greatest manager we've ever had. And there is a respect there. Memz, if you had to pinpoint 2 or 3 things that you think are the issues at Arsenal now, what would you say they are?
It's a great question. And I think there's so much going wrong at Arsenal at the moment. And if we start off with the board situation, we've got an owner in Stan Kroenke who doesn't invest in the club. He's taken £6 million out, in fact, and he's never put his hand in his pocket and helped the club in any financial way in terms of signings. He oversaw the transition from moving to the Emirates, and he oversaw the club selling off their assets to Manchester United, Manchester City, and other top clubs. And at no point did he turn around and say, hang about, we don't need to do this, here is some money to help out the situation. So I think the issue, one of the issues is Stan Kroenke. I don't think we get the support that we should from the owner. And I think if Mr. Usmanov was in charge over at Arsenal, we certainly see things differently. Another issue is Arsene Wenger. I look at Arsene Wenger and I see him as 2 different people. I see him as the invincible, the glorious, the champion Arsene Wenger, walking around giving it all that, the 49 games and beating them, the wonderful memories. And then I look at Arsene Wenger, slumped in his chair, throwing bottles of water around, having to go at the 4th official. And somewhere along the line, Arsene changed. He changed his philosophy. He changed a lot of things over the years, and I think football has changed as well. It's bypassed him in terms of style. I mean, we used to play this free-flowing football. We don't even see that anymore. Against Liverpool on the weekend, we struggled. We didn't have a shot on target. Arsenal are really struggling at the moment. I think, touching what Dal says, if we had a stronger board, I don't think Arsene Wenger would have been there. I think he got the new 2-year contract based on previous achievements. He shouldn't be there, to be honest with you. I don't think the players are responding to him. I don't think he's getting the respect in the dressing room. I think there's some sort of differences within the board level as well between him and Gazidis. I think we've got major problems over at Arsenal, and unfortunately we've got 2 more years of it because the board won't sack him. He won't resign. So it's just something that we have to hope that it's going to improve. And it's really tough because there's a number of things over Arsenal which are wrong at the moment. But even if you look at his tactics and his team selection, Harry, I mean, on the weekend we had Hector Bellerin, who's a right back playing on the left hand side of midfield. We had a £50 million striker in Lacazette sitting on the bench with Danny Welbeck, up front. We had Mustafi, a £35 million defender playing, on the bench, and we have Monreal playing. There's all types of decisions going wrong over at Arsenal at the moment, and someone who's not an Arsenal fan, you're looking at Arsene Wenger and you're scratching your head and thinking, why are you making these decisions? So there's a lot of things going wrong over at Arsenal at the moment, and I really don't know what the answer and what the solution is.
I think I agree with everything you just said there. In particular, the team selections and the tactics employed by Wenger. I think as a fan, that's what I find the most frustrating. I mean, like you said, Bellerin out of position, Monreal having to play centre half. I felt before the game that Oxlade-Chamberlain was only in the team to try and keep him at the club, but it doesn't look like that's worked anyway. And so Hector Bellerin has to suffer playing on the other side. You also mentioned Lacazette not starting. This is a £52 million striker. We've broken our transfer record, a guy with an unbelievable goal ratio. Yet Danny Welbeck, who can't hit a barn door, is playing ahead of him. And on top of that, he's also starting in front of Olivier Giroud, who, in my opinion, poses the exact type of threat that Liverpool have shown this season that they cannot handle.
Absolutely.
Set pieces, they've been a disaster. And Olivier Giroud is that type of striker that will get in and amongst the centre-halves, make things happen, you know. And yeah, he's not the greatest player in the world. He's not. But he's a useful option. And I just feel like he was a better option than Welbeck. Dale mentioned earlier about Rob Holding. This kid is not ready to play for Arsenal. No. He's not ready. He had a few games where he kind of got by. He has made mistakes. He's just been fortunate not to be punished too often. A friend of ours, a friend of the show's, a guy called Chig, who runs the Gooner Eagle Eye show. So a big shout out to him. He was on a little while ago, and he described Arsene Wenger as that granddad that's gone senile. You love him, but you know he's lost it. And that was, I thought that was a brilliant way to describe him.
He's a good guy, Chris. He is. But I want to touch on one thing as well. I mean, if you look at the Liverpool team, Dal, I mean, if you used to say what is their strengths before kickoff, and you say, you know, you pick out two players who are potentially going to cause Arsenal problems, you'd pick out Mane and Salah, the two wingers with pace. And what does he do? He gets we've signed a defender in Kolasinac, who's one of the best left backs in Germany last season in the Bundesliga. But yet you're playing Hector Bellerin, who's a right back, on the left. So Salah and Mane were absolutely going to have a field day because they're not playing against natural defenders in Bellerin and Oxlade-Chamberlain. So if you've got these players at the club, play them in their natural positions. It's just not making sense.
I felt what was happening as well on Sunday was Bellerin and Ox sometimes were not tracking their man. And you ended up in a situation similar for the Mane goal where Holding has to come across. And then you've dragged the centre-back into unknown territory and it causes problems. I think the thing that frustrated me so much on Sunday was, you know, we're 2-0 down, it's half time, and then you decide to take off Aaron Ramsey and put Francis Coquelin in. Why didn't you bloody start the game like that? That was the most frustrating thing for me. You know, I don't think Xhaka and Ramsey are compatible, and I've said it on previous shows, simply for the fact that I feel that Aaron Ramsey wants to be the number 10, and you just can't have two of those in the team. With him and Ozil in the same 11, that's what happens.
I think take out the tactical decision to take Ramsey off for half time. I think the reason which forced him to take him off was in the first half, there were several times he might have kept the ball away. It was his lack of effort to get back, his lack of effort to show that he cared. At times, Ramsey was nothing short of pathetic. And the commentaries picked up on that. And I think Wenger was probably thinking, rightly get him off because he's had to get rid of him on that day. Because he would have shipped way more goals. I know he shipped two more. He lost one. He got hammered. But Ramsey was nothing short of pathetic. He wasn't helping Arsenal out, and I suppose Wenger was thinking the worst. But that's another sign of things that are bad. Wenger was thinking at half time, I need to get him off because he's just destructive, rather than I need to make a substitution here and try and get a goal back, or let's get back into the game. You know, Arsenal should, if you're 2-0 down, should be thinking, how are we going to get back in the game, not close it out at half time.
Absolutely right.
That's accepting defeat. And that's straight away. Like after the game, you'd Wenger say the performance was disastrous or something like that. For example, you were disastrous. You were disastrous, given what the lads are just saying there about the playing players in the wrong position. The lineup was disastrous. Yes, the performance was, the scoreline was, but Arsenal Football Club that day and at the moment, just that's the word that sums it up for me.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, we can all sit here and we can talk for hours about our grievances with Arsene Wenger over the last few years. But Memz, I want to put this one to you.
Sure.
You said earlier the board won't sack him, and I agree with that. So what is the solution? What would you do if you were in charge of Arsenal Football Club? How would you resolve the current issues at the club?
Do you know what, Harry? We saw when Leicester won the league the following season, the players had a bit of a sort of like a dressing room sort of storm, and they got the manager out, didn't they? You know, we saw it with Mourinho over at Chelsea, John Terry and Costa and Fabregas supposedly, you know, led a revoke against the manager. I think to get Arsene Wenger out of the club, it's going to take something like that. because the board are toothless. They're not going to be able to sack him. It will need something drastic like that. It will need the players to sort of stand up and say that, you know, there's something seriously wrong here. The fans have protested before. It didn't make any difference. We've seen planes flying above stadiums, and we've seen massive protests outside the grounds. That's not made any difference. The board, I think, as long as the board's making money and they're seeing the revenue coming through, and Wenger's reaching 4th place, they're quite happy. I think I don't know what the answer is. I felt that bringing in a different number 2 a couple of years ago would have maybe made some difference, but that hasn't. I think Arsene Wenger now, he's got 2 years to go. I think maybe at the end of this season, maybe there should be that transition between who the next manager should come in and Arsene Wenger. So next year, maybe Arsene Wenger maybe can almost have an advisory role to whoever that new manager come in. And there's talk about Thierry Henry possibly coming and being the next manager. So even if it's next season, Arsene is supporting Thierry Henry or whoever that new manager is, then I think that they should be certainly planning for the future. Because I don't want to see Arsene Wenger getting a new contract, that's for sure.
No, I don't even want to see him continuing the one he's on. But what can we do? I mean, if you could pluck any manager out from the game currently now, actually, let me change that question because that's a bit far-fetched. Let's say, you know, Arsene Wenger walks tomorrow. Who would you bring in? Who would you go after as the leader of the club, the boss, the big man, Stan Kroenke, Ivan Gazidis, whoever you want to be? Who would you go out there and try and entice and try and bring into the club?
I've always been a massive fan of Diego Simeone, and I think he's got that energy on the touchline. That's something new that will certainly motivate the players over at Arsenal, and I think he'll win the ball, win the crowd over as well. I mean, it's something that, you know, Arsenal fans, there's this divide in in our fan base at the moment, you know, and there's a big split, and the atmosphere over at Arsenal is poor as well. And if we had someone like Diego Simeone on the dugout, you know, ranting and raving, I think he would certainly get some fans on the side. I think he's that type of manager that can, you know, take a player who's probably not doing particularly well and make them even better just by his management skills. I think if Simeone is available, Arsenal will be doing absolutely everything to bring him to Arsenal Football Club. But you know, I liked Allegri as well. I thought Allegri was available last season. He was saying the right things. I think if he was approached and asked, he would probably taken the job. I don't know. Honestly, I believe Arsenal won't go for those 2 names. I think they're too high profile. I think Arsenal will probably end up going for someone like the Bournemouth manager, Eddie Howe, or, you know, like I said earlier on, there's rumours that Thierry Henry is going to be even sort of like developed into the next manager. So it's a funny one over at Arsenal. But if it was up to me, Harry, it would be Simeone.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's out of Simeone and Allegri for me. Dale, what about yourself? Who do you think would be a good fit for Arsenal? Who can lift them out of the water, so to speak?
I like the idea of Simona, given his persona and that, but he doesn't speak English, and I think that's a massive issue. I think if you speak to anyone that's working in a foreign country that hasn't spoke the language like Gary Neville, it's a big issue. You know, because you might pass a message to your players, but you need a translator to translate it, and that same feel, the tone you're given, is not being passed to the dressing room, and that's a massive issue. I think one of the best managers in England. He will never manage Arsenal, but he's a perfect fit for a club that looks long term. That he plays great football. He's never going to manage.
Don't say it. Don't say
it. and the Arsenal fans aren't going to like this either. I really rate Pochettino. I think he's one of the best managers coming up in the game right now. I think he's absolutely fantastic. Plays great football. The players love him. The players want to leave Spurs at the moment, and it's not because of him, it's because the Spurs don't play. So I think, look, that's never going to happen. I rate him really highly, but I suppose the 2 managers you've mentioned already, Allegri and Simone, might be better shouts at the moment.
Yeah, what do you think of the Arsenal about Thierry Henry? What do you think, Dale? Do you think he can be the Zidane potentially? I mean, I know he hasn't had any sort of real management experience over the years, but you've seen with Zidane at Real Madrid. Yeah. You think Henry can do something?
I don't know. No one knows. The other thing as well is, I've asked this question before with Ryan Giggs, Manchester United. And people like to jump to say Zidane, Pep Guardiola, Barcelona. And it's so unfair because both of them are so different. They've done their own thing. Let Henry go, if he becomes Arsenal manager, let him be a Thierry Henry. Maybe that's something that Arsenal might need, because straight away fans would take warm to the idea. he's a player that was there through the good days. He knows what DNA was needed to win league titles, and maybe that's something you need again. But it's always a risk. He hasn't got the experience to manage a club like Arsenal just yet. I know he's gained experience being assistant at Belgium, but again, it's a risk. It will be a massive risk, and I think as a Man United fan, even as much as I love Ryan Giggs and people were shouting for Ryan Giggs before Mourinho, we took a risk with David Moyes, and to be honest, I certainly wouldn't want to take another risk again after that.
Fair enough.
Yeah, David Moyes didn't give off the best impression at his time at United. There's no doubt about that. I mean, all the post-match spotlight has been on Arsenal for obvious reasons. But Dale, starting with yourself, what did you make of Liverpool's performance? How far can Liverpool go this season?
Everyone knows it's no surprise Liverpool are the best counter-attacking side in England since they signed Salah. At wide, you have Salah, you have Mane, and there's very few teams that are going to be able to keep up with those two players on a counter-attack. But what's to make Liverpool? I think it's very, very hard to make out because I thought Arsenal was so bad that any team could have beat them on the day. And I don't mean to take that away from Liverpool. Obviously, they got their game plan spot on. They hammered Arsenal in every department on the pitch. Every 50-50 was won by Liverpool. But again, I don't know how much you can take out of that given how bad Arsenal were. But like I said, look, they're a dangerous threat going forward. And I think you mentioned previously, why didn't he start Giroud? Because I think looking at that Liverpool team, how are Arsenal going to hurt them? And it's true set pieces, ball in the air. They can't defend. And Giroud, for me, is the player stands out. It's going to take advantage of that. And look, I don't know how much you can take from Liverpool in that game. Wasn't a good day for Arsenal. And to be honest, in previous games this season, the previous two games, Liverpool didn't really convince me.
Okay.
So, down to the Arsenal performance for me.
Memz, what do you make of Liverpool?
I was really impressed. I'm a big admirer of Jurgen Klopp. I was always liked him ever since his Dortmund day. I think he's a good fit over at Liverpool. He seems to get the crowd there. He's getting the best out of some players. Very impressed with Liverpool going forward. Like Dale said, counter-attacking. Bit suspect at the back, if I'm being honest with you. I mean, the goalkeeper that they brought in, he didn't really have much to do against Arsenal, but he's kicking. There was a number of times where Danny Welbeck closed him down, I think about 3 or 4 times, and he's quite fortunate in some aspects. I think defensively, Liverpool might struggle. I think if Liverpool went out and signed Van Dijk, I think they're going to be they're going to be there or thereabout. I can't understand why Liverpool didn't buy Pepe from Real Madrid, who went to Besiktas on a free transfer. I thought that would have been an absolute perfect fit. But they certainly need a centre back. Goalkeeper, I'm not too sure about. But going forward, Liverpool, they're going to score a lot of goals this season.
Fair point. They certainly look like they've got plenty of attacking power. They've agreed a deal with Leipzig for Naby Keita, but he won't be joining up with the club until next season now. They're also in the hunt for Thomas Lemar, like we mentioned earlier on. Does that mean perhaps they'll allow Coutinho to move on, assuming Barca are still interested, considering they've just signed Dembele? Dale, do you think that Coutinho could still be on his way out, or have they done enough to fight off the Barcelona wolf for a little while?
Last week I was convinced that he was staying, but I think with the newly interested in Lemar might open things up a small bit. And since the start of the season, they've been so good going forward, they've been potent almost, that why not just sell and get the money and strengthen that defence? I look at that Liverpool defence, and goalkeeper's not great either, especially Karius is nowhere near good enough to be their first team goalkeeper. But I look at sell Coutinho, get all that money in, and try and strengthen before the transfer window closes. Because if they can work on that defence and clear things up with that attack, there's no reason why they couldn't challenge. Obviously, they've got European football this season, which means more games. You need strength and depth and so on. But we go back to the same message we had to start with Sanchez. Is it worth keeping a player that's unhappy? And he's 100% aggravated at the moment. He's had an opportunity to join Barcelona, possibly his dream, and they've stood in his way, even though they know he's very, very unhappy. I think they're crazy to keep him, because considering the money offered, he's not worth that. They could get in maybe 2 defenders to really shape things up.
Yeah, Memz, as obviously you look at them from an Arsenal point of view as well, there's a part of you want to see Coutinho stay just to prove that you can hold on to a player even after Barca or Real Madrid or Bayern Munich have tried to turn their head?
In all honesty, no, I don't. I want him to go because he's scored against us a few times in the past, and he's a wonderful player. I don't want to see good players playing against us, and I know there's that old sentiment that, of course, it makes the Premier League a better place, but I'm looking at it from Philippe Coutinho's, his perspective as well. And like Dale said, if this is his dream to play for Barcelona, he might not get this opportunity ever again. I think his head will certainly be turned. And if, like Dale said again, I don't think he's worth 120 million. If I'm being honest, it's a crazy market at the moment. I would like to see Coutinho join Barcelona, and I think they should invest that money in defensive, because I think they've got enough going forward. He's a good player, but I don't think he's worth 120 million pounds. That's for sure.
Yeah, I share the same opinion. Dale, as well as being a highly respected football writer, you're an editor for Stretty News, which is a Manchester United blog, which you were involved in setting up. Is that right?
Yeah, I've ran it since 2010.
Okay, so there's no one better qualified to talk to about Manchester United than yourself.
I wouldn't say.
So what do you make of United's start to the season? Is it too early to call them favourites for the title?
No. I don't think it's too early to call us favourites. I think it's too early to say it's set in stone that we're going to march through and hammer everyone and march onto the title. The favourites is a loose term. That's looking at betting sites and the clock up who looks most likely at the moment. And if you look at the teams in the first 3 games, it's definitely Manchester United. That's not to say that'll be the case in 2 months' time or a month's time even. I think, look, we won the first 3 games last season. United won the first 3 games last season. Done the same this year. Yet last season, United finished 6th. That doesn't paint the picture that says to me, oh, this definitely means we're going to march onto the title. Not one bit. And as well as that, there's more responsibility this season. We're going to face more difficult teams in Europe with Champions League qualification. And Mourinho is not going to sit back and say, lovely Champions League football. Let's just throw all our eggs in the one basket Premier League now that we have Champions League. He's going to go and try and win that as well, without question. He's going to try and win both. So that comes more responsibility. We've seen Chelsea last year had a cancer winning the league, but they didn't have European football. So this season's going to be very, very interesting because Chelsea have that now. They have more games, and so have United. So I think United are favourites. But like I said a minute ago, that's a loose term, and it's way too early to say that to rule anyone out. I think we might be able to rule Arsenal now at the moment, but
thanks for that.
Cheers, now.
Look, I think the difference this season is the team has a total different backbone. It's way more powerful. It's strong. And you look at the likes of Man City, and you look at Liverpool, that are way better going forward than United, and that will cruise past more teams than United. But when United are struggling for goals, you look at the team, you see they're so powerful. They're just going to crush teams. The difference this year too, they're scoring from set pieces. And I can't remember many times last season United scored from a corner. Way taller, way stronger. And Lukaku offers way different dimensions than Zlatan, who's now back, which means we've so many options to depend on your opponent who to start up front. Lukaku, the reason we're scoring more goals is because he's quick. United were too slow in recent years since Ferguson's left the David Moyes years and all that. It was just too slow, and Wayne Rooney was slowing things down. Van Persie had lost his legs, and then last year Zlatan was brilliant, but he wasn't quick. And now we're seeing when United attack on the counter, it's so rapid, and teams can't cope with that. Whereas recent years gone by, it was pedestrian, and defenders had time to get back, and it wasn't good enough. Whereas now it's just boom, teams are afraid of us, and when they get leggy, United are able to capitalise on that.
Yep. I mean, I need to put my hands up in the air because last season I was the first person to call Paul Pogba a waste of money. I must admit. But this season, he's impressed me in the opening 3 games. He looks a far better player. What do you put that down to? Is it because of the players he's got around him? Has Nemanja Matic been the key?
So many things. He came to Manchester United. I said this last season too. He was 23 coming to Manchester United. He was playing with the best team in Italy by a cancer. Playing with fantastic midfielders during that spell. You look at Vidal and Pirlo, and the list goes on really. And then he comes into a team that had a new manager, had a bunch of new players, had failed in recent seasons, especially given the league. And he was expected to come in 23 and rule this team immediately. People talk about money. To be honest with you, nowadays, it means nothing nowadays. You sign the best players for whatever price, and the fans are happy. And I think now you've got a player that's come in. He's the king of the dressing room. And I've spoken to people at United. I've worked in the press area during the pre-season, and you can see Paul Pogba rules the roost big time. And you have Matic coming in, freeing him up. There's so many different elements as to why he's performing. But I think the main one, and it's evident since he's arrived at Manchester United, is because he's a world-class player. That's the main reason. He's a Rolls Royce of a midfielder. And I think when he's played in a team that suits him, it's more evident.
Yeah. Memz, what do you make of Romelu Lukaku? He's impressed so far. I had a bit of a dodgy game on the weekend. Awful penalty, I thought. Perfect height for the keeper. And I don't know. I'm still not 100% convinced. What do you think about him?
Do you know, whenever I saw Lukaku at Everton, I was always impressed. He's a powerful player. He's so difficult to play against because of his pace. Like Dale said, he's good in the air. He's almost like a Giroud with pace. The only thing, obviously, is the link-up play in his first touch, which has been highlighted on social media a lot. But I think he's going to score a lot of goals at Manchester United, purely for the fact that United create so many chances. He's a handful. And I think as a centre-back, centre-back would want to play against him because he's so unorthodox and you don't know what he's going to do. I'm a big fan of Lukaku. I think he's going to score a lot of goals. The whole thing about Manchester United, though, is just I don't know what their best starting 11 is. With Rashford, is it with Mkhitaryan, is it with Martial? Is it with Lingard? I don't know what Manchester United's best starting 11 is, to be honest with you, and that's why I think I'm not really convinced. I think they've had a really good start to the season. I'm particularly impressed with the centre back Ballet, who I think is a top defender. I think Matic is coming in, has shored things up. I don't know what the best starting 11 is for Manchester United at the moment. And this is where I've got some sort of, I don't know if they're going to be able to sustain this. The whole thing about sort of Fellaini, when Man United are chasing the game, they put Fellaini on and they go very direct, don't they? So I could see where Dale was saying that they're a bit more dangerous from set plays now, especially with that lump up front. So it's a funny one with Man United. I mean, I think they're going to do very, very well, and they're going to be there or thereabouts this season. I'm just not too sure at the moment. I think they spent a lot of money on that centre back. Is it Lindegaard or
Lindelof?
Yeah, he hasn't got a sniff yet. So I just don't know what's. It's a funny one because Mkhitaryan's coming on and he's doing particularly well, but then he's back on the bench again. Same with Martial, same with Rashford. I don't know what's going on there. You look at Chelsea a couple of years ago when they won the title. You could pick that starting 11 and it would just roll off your tongue. You knew who was playing where. At United, I don't see that yet.
Yeah, fair play. We've spoken at length about Arsene Wenger already, but two other managers that are currently under a bit of pressure, even 3 games into the season, are De Boer at Palace and Bilic at West Ham. Dale, De Boer, is he the man for Crystal Palace? And on our pre-season show, I put it out there and I said that I felt Crystal Palace would struggle this year on the basis that I don't think he'll be able to get that set of players playing his way of football. What do you make of the whole thing?
You cannot get blood out of a stone. And I look at this Palace team and you're trying to play this total football, which sounds wonderful. It's music to ears of football fans, but you have not got the players to play it. And I seen Scott Dan give an interview before the season started, and he was saying that we're really looking forward to playing his football. And shut up, don't talk about it. Go and do it and prove you can do it, because so far there's no signs. I'm looking at this, trying to see from a fan's perspective, and I will be so angry watching people that are coming out saying, "Oh, we're looking forward to playing this." You're not Gerard Piqué, mate. You need to go and prove before you go blabbing on about playing this total football game. And I think watching him, it depends on the manager right now, because is he stubborn? Is he going to play a different way? Is he going to go back to basics? I see that team, and if they continue playing that type of football and setting up that way, they're getting relegated. If they stand by that manager, they're getting relegated. And I think you look at just a team that there's no confidence, and you're asking them to be elaborate on the ball and stuff. That's not going to work. Go back to basics and just grind out results, and then maybe build on that by getting the players in that can play that type of a football. Now, this manager didn't do well at Inter Milan, lost his job, and he's come into this, and they've been dreadful. Like, to be honest, people. Like, I'm a manager that I'm a person that likes long-termism. I like seeing people stand by managers until it gets to the stage that you can't go any further. I know it's been very, 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 very early, but just can't see things turning around. If he is that stubborn, no, you have to get rid.
I think for me, Crystal Palace feel that they are further along on the progress line than they actually are. I think they forgot that they almost got relegated last season. And so you need to then stabilise yourself, stabilise your team. And Sam Allardyce did exactly what was necessary to get them over the line and keep them in a division. The Boer is the kind of, and maybe he's not the greatest manager, but his philosophy and his style is for when you're ready to move to that next level. And I just don't think they're there yet. Memz, Crystal Palace, another London club, we want them to stay in the division. It's an easy away game. But, how do you see things panning out under the Boer?
Dowell nailed it, to be honest with you, and I think you're right. You can't polish a turd, and with all due respect to the players over at Palace, you're not going to get them to play the Johan Cruyff style of football overnight. I mean, these are players, with all due respect, who have been playing under Sam Allardyce, who was playing a very direct. He had Adebayor up front, and they're not going to be able to change overnight. It's going to take some time, and I don't know if you're going to have that time in the Premier League. I think Palace will really struggle, and I think the Boer will probably be the first casualty in terms of managers getting sacked. I think it's a strange appointment. I really do. When you're considering the managers who are available, English managers as well, who know the game, I can't see the logic of that, to be honest with you. But it's a strange one, isn't it? Because you look at sort of like the Huddersfield manager, and everyone's ranting and raving about him. They're calling him the new sort of Jurgen Klopp. I remember when Laudrup came onto the scene at Swansea, everyone was raving about him as well. So it's a tough league, and it's almost like what we spoke about with Thierry Henry earlier on. They could either go down that route and they look magical, or they can go down the route of Tony Adams and Roy Keane as a manager and just failing. I think it's a tough league, the Premier League, and you really need to have some proven managers who understand the league, understand the culture, understand the players. The English league as well is so fast as well, and I think if the managers come from the Dutch league or the Italian league as well, it's just going to take them time to adjust as well. I think Palace are going to struggle, because it's a shame for Palace. I really like Palace. I think they've got an amazing set of fans. They're probably one of the best set of.
They should have given it up to Gary Monk.
They should have done. I agree.
Young manager, and did very well with Leeds, and I'm sure they're sorry to see the back of him. And I think he was wrongly sacked by Swansea at that time. He brought him up. Or did he bring him up?
No, I don't think he brought them up. I think he stepped in.
Someone was sacked and stepped in. But they played good football. He kept them up, and they became a Premier League team, not just a newly promoted team. And he's a manager. As you mentioned, you come into the English game, it's so quick and it's so different to the Dutch game, which, look, don't get me wrong, the Boer did a fantastic job with Ajax. But he struggled in Italy, and just like that's why you need a director of football. I don't know if Crystal Palace got one, but you need to consider things like what kind of football he plays. Will it suit our players? Again, like the Premier League players, so they deserve a bit of credit, but they're not playing total football, and that's an absolute joke. Sorry.
What about Slaven Bilic? He's another one who's under pressure. Apparently, West Ham held an emergency board meeting this week regarding his future. The first season went brilliantly, but since the move to the London Stadium and a few big money signings haven't quite come off.
Yeah.
Does he deserve the level of criticism he's currently facing, Memz?
What's the expectation of West Ham fans?
This is the,
That's one thing. That's one thing I'll ask from West Ham fans. What is your expectation at the start of the season? Is it, if your expectation is to finish in the top 6, then you need to have a bit of a reality check. If it's finishing mid-table and avoiding relegation, that's probably West Ham's level, with all due respect. West Ham had a fantastic first season under Slaven Bilic, and I think they probably punched well above their weight. I'm a big Slaven Bilic fan. I know him from the Turkish league when he was manager at Besiktas. He's a good man manager. He gets the best out of his players, what's available. I think he's a good tactician as well. I think, like what you've said, Harry, some signings didn't go his way. He signed a few players like Nordved and Gurkan Toure, Ayew, etc. And they've been Snodgrass have been flops. But then again, he has signed players like Lanzini, who have developed into real good players. I think I don't like this culture of sacking managers every time there's a slight dip. I think sometimes you've got to persevere and you've got to stick by them. I remember when Alex Ferguson, and Dale will tell you, when Alex Ferguson first came to Manchester United, I think there was calls for his head after the first 6 or 7 months, because he wasn't doing particularly well. And I think sometimes if you're just a bit patient, you can get the rewards long term. I like Bilic. I think he's a good fit for West Ham. And if you get rid of Bilic, who are you going to get? Who are you going to get at West Ham? I mean, there's talk about Rafa Benitez going to West Ham. With all due respect, is he much better than Slaven Bilic? I'd rather have Slaven Bilic.
Dale, what do you think of Slaven Bilic?
I think you go back to what was just said a minute ago. What is the expectation for West Ham? I remember Bilic was only in and reading a piece from a West Ham blogger talking about playing the West Ham way. What is that? What is the West Ham way? They speak as if they're a Real Madrid or this big super club, and it's just not the case. You need to lower your expectations a small bit and realise, is the manager doing a good job? Right, as we mentioned, signings have been 50-50. Lanzini is a lovely little player. Great to watch, look technical and stuff, but Snodgrass is a good Premier League player, but he hasn't really got his chance, has he really? And you kind of question, they took him at a Hull where he was brilliant, and you haven't really seen the same player. I think fans weren't happy last season with Bilic. They were not one bit happy, and they put that down to the new stadium, which I don't really understand. Like, make it feel like home, and your fans, grown men fighting with each other, it's just children really, but you can't put it down to that. I read a piece this week saying that they were one of the worst tactical sides this season in the Premier League. If that is the case, the manager has to take some blame. But the question you always ask before you sack a manager is, who are you going to bring in? Is he going to improve the team? Is he going to play the way these players are set up to play? Bilic has plenty of options. Hernandez was a bargain signing. Didn't agree with people saying Man United should have went back in for him, because when he played for Man United, the end of his United spell, he wasn't very good. He was a great impact sub, but he was never a player that you trust starting off in a game that would win you games. He was an impact sub. But you've got Andy Carroll and a number of players, so you can mix things around and get the best out of those. But no, I think West Ham at the moment shouldn't rush into things. But on the case of Crystal Palace, I think it's totally different. Get him out. Get the Boer out.
Get him out as soon as possible is your view on that one then. Right, guys, we've come towards the end of the show, and as usual, we always run over this. It just happens. We get deep in conversation, and that's what happens. Dale, tell our listeners a little bit about what you're doing at the moment, how they can get in touch with you, and yeah.
Yeah, you can read my Manchester United ramblings from StrettyNews.com or The Sportsman. You can follow me at O'Donnell Dale on Twitter. I just talk a lot of rubbish, and if you like Conor McGregor, I wouldn't advise you to follow, because there's lots of negative comments on there.
Memz, what about yourself? You've got a huge Twitter following, as we mentioned earlier, and I mentioned that you're the founder of FT Reaction. Tell us a little bit about it, how people can get involved, how people can contact you.
Nice one, mate. I appreciate it. It was basically, I was on Arsenal Fan TV. You'd done a show for Arsenal Fan TV last year called Arsenal Fan TV Extra. It was basically straight after full time, a little live show, the initial reaction to that, and then I started thinking about sort of fans who can't go to games, and how some get fans who want to have a say, especially after a full time. And now we live in a world where everyone's got a smartphone or a video. So we come up with this concept called full-time reaction. And basically, it's 90 seconds straight after full time. It goes for every club. You don't have to be an Arsenal fan. You can be any supporter. And we get in Chelsea fans, Spurs fans, and Tranmere Rovers and Millwall fans as well. It's 90 seconds. You send a 90-second video into me. I basically upload it to the YouTube channel. And it's a central point where every fan can, or a football fan can just go to YouTube, go to full-time reaction. You can search, you can find fans having a rant as well. And one of the beauties of it as well is that, when I'm from Arsenal fan TV, you'll notice as well, Harry, is that not all Arsenal fans watch Arsenal fans TV. You get a lot of Spurs fans that enjoy watching Arsenal fans having a meltdown as well. And I think it's one of the beauties now of this whole fans thing is watching other fans having a bit of a meltdown. So it's something that which was set up, it's going really well. So yeah, if you're interested, come along, and if you want to send some videos, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, to check it out, guys. I can vouch for it. It is a brilliant concept. I've sent a couple of videos. I can't cram my rants down into 90 seconds, more like 5 minutes. But, you know, that's the problem. I'll have to trim them down next time. What can we do? Guys, I'd like to say a huge thank you to both of you for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully we can have you on again soon.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure, mate. It's been a pleasure, mate. Thanks, Harry. Nice one, Dale.
No worries. I'd like to say a huge thank you to our partners for their continued support. The FNX Network, TagPay, Still at Shoot the Defence, another great football show. Check that one out. Elite Editorial, Perfect Radio UK, and Nick Tanner Events. Nick Tanner, the former Liverpool defender, will be joining us in the coming weeks to review his brand new book, which is called From A Field to Anfield. I've got a copy right here, signed by the man himself, so that should be interesting. Whether you're watching live on YouTube, listening on iTunes, make sure you hit that subscribe button. That's all from the Sofa Sports News team this week, and we'll catch you next time.